24-hour notice.
Okay. For you that are just tuning in to the Residence Journal, I'm your host for this evening, Mary C. Johns. And the Residence Journal is a national award winning quarterly publication that's written by Chicago low income residents. Today we're talking about renters' rights. The rights for tenants to, what rights do they have to sue the landlord who is failing to maintain their unit? And we've covered that already. We've covered what's the differences and the rights for public housing residents and Section 8 versus just other low-income people renting in the private market housing. And so another question is, well, what can a tenant do who just paid the rent? Because a lot of people, like I said earlier, the focus is on people losing their homes to home foreclosures, the homeowners, but they're not focusing on the renters who have, been evicted and thrown out of buildings or forced out because the landlords of these buildings, fail to upkeep. Continue to pay the mortgage or whatever they paying on the building, and so they jeopardize the renters, and they have to go because of the landlords. So some of this takes place when the residents, the low income people, just paid their rent. And so the question is, if a tenant who just paid the rent just now, shortly thereafter, received notice that they have to move, vacate the building because the landlord foreclosed on the building, how can the tenant get their rent money back that they just paid?
It depends on the situation. It depends on whether or not the landlord owned the building at that time when they paid rent. So first, what they need to do is find out whether or not the landlord owned the building, and they can do that by getting the PIN number of the property and going to the recorder of deeds to find out that information. If there has been a sale and the landlord no longer owns that building, then they need to go sue that landlord. They will also most likely be suing the landlord for the security deposit, because anytime a tenant's in foreclosure, they have to go through their landlord to get the security deposit. Now, the landlord's not going to have any right to withhold any money from that unless they owed them back rent, because if the property is no longer theirs, they're not using that money to make repairs to the property, obviously, because it's no longer theirs. Now, tenants have the right to sue for twice the security deposit and the security deposit. So it's pretty much 3 times the security deposit plus attorney's fees. So another the beauty of this ordinance for people that are covered under it is that a lot of attorney's fees are covered in any kind of litigation required. So, but they would definitely need to go after that landlord for that back rent if they took rent that they didn't while they didn't own the building.
Some landlords have been known in news reports to have maybe it's known that their name not attached to the building or something like that, like fraud involved or something like that. And so how would a tenant really find out who the person they thought was the landlord? How would they go about finding them to take them to court to try to get some, the security deposit back?
That's a very good question. So if there is a fraudulent owner, and they were never associated with the property, is that what you're saying?
If they're not associated with the property, or they obtain the property fraudulently, okay. Maybe it's somebody else's apartment, a building, and they, renting it out. Maybe they, it was a case where a landlord rented out the property and they didn't have papers or something to be like building owners.
Right.
And then something happened and went to foreclosure, and then people couldn't get their security deposit back. So those tenants was having a hard time securing the person. Like, who is this person?
Well, the first route that they could go about is going through that recorder of deeds and trying to find the tax information. Because if that person ever had affiliation with the property, say they're the old owner, then they could use the tax information to find that. But otherwise, they got to be creative. And that is a tough situation, even for lawyers, to do a reverse phone lookup, just get creative on how to find that information.
Well, thank you. We seem to have a caller. Hi, caller.
Hello?
Hi,
Hi,
how
I
are
have a
you?
question for your guest. I'd like to ask her how often does she see tenants, fighting with their landlords in court because of the landlord's neglect, for not having up to code violations. And I'd like to say, is it a growing problem due to, what everyone's going through, the economic times? Thank you.
Thank you. Did you understand the call?
Yeah, the second part I'm not I wanted to ask him to expand a little bit more on.
Caller, if you can, could you call back and repeat your
The
second part of your question, please?
So in terms of tenants taking their landlords to court for repair problems, most of the people we talk with don't end up taking their landlords to court for this. But what they do is they use this ordinance, they write a letter, they exercise their rights. Majority of the people that call our hotline, we take anywhere from 800 to 1,200 calls a month. And the majority of the people call about apartment conditions and repairs or heat and essential services. So, yes, we are getting a lot of calls about that. That is a huge issue in the city of Chicago. And but using court, most of the people that we talk about, they can write a letter. And that's the beauty of this ordinance. They can use that tool instead of having to go through the time process of court. And his second question was what regarding?
I didn't get it either because he was kind of low, but hopefully that's him on the next call. We seem to have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hello again. My second part of the question was, if a landlord's facing economic challenges due to, like, if he can't afford, court fees in court, and if he's facing foreclosure of his building itself. That's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if a landlord is having issues and they're struggling to pay, we don't counsel. I don't have as many resources for that. But what I will say is that there are funds through 311 that help renters, and I believe that same source helps landlords too, or who are behind on their mortgage. What I would suggest to any tenant or landlord who is facing that as an obstacle would be to go to a local housing counseling agency, specifically a nonprofit. But
right now we're talking about the rights for low-income people. And we appreciate you, though, caller. Thank you for calling. We seem to have another caller. Hi, caller. Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. My question is... Oh, you're talking to me. I'm sorry. My question is, I'm relocated from public housing. And I moved into a mixed-income housing complex. And I'm getting complaints that I'm doing things violating my lease, like having a bunch of people in my house. And I haven't had anybody in my house in like 7 or 8 months. So what can I do? I mean, this lady put me on probation indefinitely. So what can I do?
Okay, let her respond, caller. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. In that situation, there's a way to appeal anytime you're at threat of being put off of the Section 8 program or subsidized housing. There's an appeal process. What I would do is get as much proof as possible that this is not going on. I would hopefully maybe talk to some neighbors that you're friendly with in the building, see if you can get any testimonials from them, see if you can get any testimonials from other people. And then I would also maybe, if there's any, in this situation, if they're lying about you, that's kind of hard, but I would just keep written documents of any time they suggest that you're having people over, and the times that they suggest and ways to counteract that. But there is an appeals process. You could also call the Legal Assistance Foundation if you're having a hard time with that and you're at threat of losing your voucher.
Yeah, because usually the Chicago Public Housing Authority or any housing authority, if you're a resident under there, they have a grievance
exactly.
process. And it should be attached, that information, in your lease agreement.
Yeah. Let me give you the number too.
Yeah, and here's a number for you.
The Legal Assistance Foundation is 312-341-1070. But I would start off by putting things in writing, addressing things in writing, keep a copy for yourself, send it certified mail, and get, like I said, get witnesses that that this isn't going on and that they're making up stuff.